New Hampshire real estate sure remained interesting in 2022, folks. The final numbers are finally in. The amount of homes sold was down 16%, but prices were up 15%. I know that's confusing to many of you, but I'm excited to be here to go over our housing market review for 2022 with you and talk a little bit about my 2023 predictions. But first, I want to talk to buyers and sellers and give you some suggestions and some recommendations with what you should be thinking about here in the winter of 2023. Okay, let's start with home buyers. I want to talk to you all first, and I want to remind you that for 2.5 years you were dying to be in a situation where you could buy a home without competing with 10 people, where you didn't have to pay over asking, where you didn't have to have so much competition. Folks, it finally arrived. That opportunity arrived last summer. It was here all fall. Fall, I've said for years, more than a decade I have said, the best time of year to buy a home is in the fall. The problem is very few buyers listen to me, and you all end up coming out after the new year, and that is exactly what happened this year. And in fact, this year, you didn't even wait till after the new year. It was like everything changed the day after Christmas. All of you that were in somewhat hiding and hibernation since about September came out in droves. And we are back to seeing multiple offer situations, competition on listings, properties selling quickly, properties selling over asking price. Is it to the extent it was a year ago or 2 years ago? No, it's not. So you still should be happy, but I will tell you, as I always do, I'm very blunt, you did miss out on a hell of an opportunity in the fall. However, couple things have improved since the fall, so in the end, I don't think it matters that you waited till now. Number one, interest rates. Mortgage interest rates peaked at about 7% in late September, early October. They are down to about 6%. Some of our lenders are quoting mid-5s and high 5s for high credit-worthy borrowers. That's one good thing. The other thing that has happened is prices did settle back down a bit throughout the fall, as many of you buyers were in hibernation. Now, many of you buyers are also sellers, and I'm going to talk to you about that as well. But prices did settle down a bit from their peak, which was May and June of 2022. So the good news now is prices are lower now than they were 6 months ago, and interest rates are lower. So now you are in a good time to buy. Is it as good as it was in the fall? No. So if you are wondering why, I shouldn't say no. I should take that back a little bit. Depends how you look at it. Interest rates are better. New homes are starting to come on the market, so there's more to choose from. But it is a bit more competitive than it was 2, 3, 4, 5 months ago. That's what I mean when I say no. So let me take that back a little bit and just to clarify it. Folks, there's never a perfect exact time. When you are qualified to buy and you are ready to buy, you should go out and buy a home. And don't hem and haw if you run into a competitive situation. If you want something and someone else wants it, that's life. That happens. If you do happen to find a home that didn't sell through the fall that's still for sale, that doesn't mean something is wrong with that house. That might be a good deal. Go after it, okay? But you have to accept the fact, home buyers, that it is a bit more competitive than it was over the last 3 or 4 months. So in one hand, yes, it's a better time to buy than it was 3 or 4 months ago because of rates and because prices have settled a bit. But on the other hand, you are going to face more competition, and it is going to be like this for the next 5 to 6 months. It's the way it goes every single year. From January to July, there's a lot of competition, and then the competition backs off in the fall months. Home sellers, I have to have a word with you, and then I promise I'm going to go into all this data. You ruled the roost for 2 years, 2.5 years, from about May 2020 till about May 2022. When rates ended up going up a point in 17 days, the whole game changed. You are still in a very good position. Your home is still worth a lot more than it was 2 years ago. In a lot of cases, it's worth more than it was a year ago. Maybe not all, but in a lot. And it's worth dramatically more than it was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. The further you go back, the more it is. And I'm going to show you that in the graphs that I'm going to go over in the housing market report. So be happy, be grateful, and don't be angry at a buyer or at your realtor because you missed the peak of May and June 2022 when home prices peaked for this cycle. In a couple of years, we'll pass that amount. But right now, most homes are not worth what they were then. They're worth a bit less. And if you recognize that up front, you price correctly up front. You get your price so that it's not just competitive in the market, but it's eye-catching to a buyer. And what I mean by that is if everything in your neighborhood is listed for, and I'm making up numbers, but listed between $800,000 and $900,000, price your home at $789,000, price your home at $799,000, and watch how many people you attract. The more people you attract, the more home buyers you attract, the more demand you will create. The more demand you create, the more your home will sell for. Okay? Pricing higher doesn't mean selling your home for more. The more competitively you price, the better off you will be. Okay, so I wanted to point these things out to home sellers because you have to recognize that the market has changed. 1 year ago right now, interest rates were 3.7%. Today, yes, they've improved, but they're still about 6%, 5.75 in that vicinity, okay? That means it costs a buyer a lot more to buy a home, and prices of other things are higher as well, and you have to accept that and you have to be realistic. All right, buyers and sellers, I talked in my normal blunt fashion. Now we're going to go into the data, and some of the things that I mentioned, I will mention again as I'm showing you the graphs, as I'm showing you the numbers, as I'm showing you the charts. Let's take a look. And now to get into the numbers for our New Hampshire housing report for 2022. And then I'm going to do a little bit of talking about what I think for 23. We'll take a look at my predictions that I had put out a month ago and talk about what I see coming and kind of where we're at right now. So let's jump right in. And I'm going to put up our 2022 year in review housing report for New Hampshire. Our marketing team did a phenomenal job on this. And I just want to go over some numbers. Sales down 16%. Average price up 15% or 14.9. Sometimes people hear that and they get confused. And I always want to remind everyone, all the buyers and sellers that are watching and listening, there is a difference between home sales and home prices. So when you hear on the radio, home sales down 20%, or in this case, home sales down 16%, that means the amount of home sales. And of course, they're down in 2022. 21 was a peak. It was the biggest year in 16 years, okay? You can't have a peak every year or it wouldn't be a peak. But if you look at this report, this shows you that the average price in New Hampshire is clearly over $500,000. We are at $524,000 for New Hampshire from this point forward. And I don't think that's going to dip below that in the next couple of years. If it does, it'll be barely, but 500 is the new norm. The amount of homes sold went from almost 15,000 down to 12,000, hence the 16% drop. Okay, now let's go through this report and look at a couple of different things. They really honed in from 2019 through 20. So just don't get confused by all the colors. You look at the dark colors, which is 2019. This is the amount of sales per month. And you can see, just like we see in Massachusetts, the amount of home sales increases in the summer and then goes back down by the end of the year. Now, notice something. In 19, the dark blue, you can see that up and down. In 22, you can see that up. You get to summer and then way down because the market really slowed down late in the year in 22. 20 and 21 were anomalies. They were odd years where it stayed somewhat flat all the way through, okay? So just be aware that those were odd years because of the pandemic, but we're getting back to seasonal adjustments that we normally see, particularly up here in the northern states where there's a lot more sale activity in the summer months. Buyer activity is always strong in the winter, late winter, early spring, and then the sales close as we get into summer, and we're getting back to that. Now let's take a look at home prices per month. Look at 2022. Every single month in 22, prices are clearly up, and if you look closely, they stayed pretty darn strong throughout the year. stayed pretty strong. We ended the year with an average price of, what does that say, 511,000. But overall for the year, prices were, what did I say up here in the image, 524,000. So things are holding strong, and that is because of the lack of homes for sale and the lack of homes being listed for sale. Okay, in Massachusetts and in Connecticut, we had the least amount of homes listed than in any year since 2000. And I'm going to show you some data for, actually, I'll do it right now. I'll skip ahead. For New Hampshire, look at this. We went back to 14. We went back 8 years. And look at this. There were less homes listed in 22 than in any year all the way back to 14. And it goes back dramatically further than that, but we only pulled the data back to 14. And that, folks, is why I do not expect to see prices just falling out. I don't see that happening. And that's why in my predictions, I talked about that. Now look at contracts accepted or homes pending. We have the least amount of homes pending than in any year, again, back to 14. So some of these bubble years that we had in the last few years, we're past that. We're adjusting. We are obviously doing what markets do. It's very common, okay? Very common in any phases of economics, be it housing, stocks, whatever it may be, for there to be overcorrections after there is a peak. Because the truth is the peak went higher than it really needed to, but interest rates were so slow, that's what happened. Now we're in a situation where if you look at the market, where we're overcorrecting back down. So let's jump up for a minute. We went through homes listed. We went through home sales. Now I'm going to take a look at average prices. I just want to show you some things by county. Rockingham County remains to be the strongest as far as home prices go. 617,000, very strong average sale price. Now we look at, if by the end of the year, you go over to Hillsborough County, 466,000, Cheshire County, 348,000, obviously the most affordable. That's the most westerly county in New Hampshire, further away from the highways, closer to Vermont. Then you go up to the Lakes region, and we're at 573,000, a lot of lakefront property. That gives us the overall average of 524. But it's pretty clear that prices are holding strong in New Hampshire. And I expect that to continue. Okay. In my predictions, which I can jump over to here, let me do that. I'm going to go to my predictions and just show you. If you go to my predictions for 2023, I mixed in many different states. New Hampshire, Connecticut, Maine, Florida, Massachusetts. These are all states that we cover. And if you look at it, one of the things that I talked about in here someplace, I'm obviously searching and talking at the same time, right here. Right here I said a year from now, when we measure the year of 2023 as a whole, I believe that prices will land somewhere between down 3% or up 3%. And that is essentially a swing of 6% total. Swing of 3 each way, 6% total. Folks, whether prices go up 3% or down 3% in 2023 should not concern you at all if you are a home buyer, okay? There are many, many, many benefits to buying a home beyond just prices going up. You get to control your own domain. You get to have a set monthly payment. Instead of worrying about your rent going up, you have a set monthly payment. And you also get tremendous tax benefits, okay? So there's many, many benefits to home ownership, and homeowners should not fret about the potential of prices settling down a little bit here in 2023, because I want to remind you as a whole, what do prices do? I mean, New Hampshire is essentially an extension of Massachusetts, and prices have doubled in the last 13 years in Massachusetts, as they have in New Hampshire. I'm trying to find the chart to show you the pricing. Well, I landed on South Florida. Hang on. This is what I wanted to show you right here. Look at that for New Hampshire. Sorry it took me a minute. I hope you stayed with me. Take a look at that. 2009, 10, 11, 12, Prices bottomed out just over 200. Look what they are now, over 500. So this graph is in our predictions blog, and it showed you the average for January through the end of December. It's at 500. Bottom line, prices have more than doubled in the state of New Hampshire in the last 12 years, folks. More than doubled. That is tremendous. And that is something that you should be very excited about if you are a homeowner. So whether you are buying or selling, just be realistic. Remember those benefits of home ownership that I mentioned. And if you're a seller, you have to accept the fact. Remember what I said, that there was a peak at last May and June. You missed it a bit. But prices are still holding pretty darn strong. So be realistic. Buyers, be realistic. This is not '08. And you all can do tons of business together. Buyers can find sellers. Sellers can find buyers. And our Lamacchia Realty realtors are here to help you do that. Thank you all for tuning in to this 2022 housing market report and mixed in with some 2023 predictions. Thanks, everybody. Good luck. Happy home buying. Happy home selling.